শুভ সন্ধ্যা সবাইকে আমন্ত্রণ জানাচ্ছি আজকের আলাপচারিতায় বিষয় আমরা স্ট্যান্ড হিসেবে বেছে নিয়েছি সাম্প্রতিক নিউজিল্যান্ডের ক্রাইস্টচার্চ শহরে ঘটে যাওয়া যে অমানবিক সন্ত্রাসী হামলায় 50 জন মুসলিম নিহত হয়েছেন এবং আহত হয়েছেন আরও সহস্রাধিক। আমাদের এই ঘটনায় সারা বিশ্ব জুড়ে বিভিন্ন ধরনের আমরা ক্যাম্পেইন দেখেছি, standing up against all sorts of hate crimes, terrorism, racism, fascism, white supremacism, এবং আজকের অনুষ্ঠানে সেজন্যই আমরা এই বিষয়টিকে আলোচনায় অন্তর্ভুক্ত করেছি এবং আমাদের সামাজিক দায়বদ্ধতার অবস্থান থেকে আমাদের কমিউনিটি হিসেবে আমাদের কি করণীয়, আমাদের মুসলিম কমিউনিটি এবং ব্রিটেনের অবস্থানরত ব্রিটিশ বাংলাদেশি কমিউনিটির কি করণীয় এই বিষয় নিয়ে আমরা আজকে আলোচনা করব। and to have this discussion we have got distinguished panel members. I'll start from my right. We have Rob Ferguson. He's from Stand Up to Racism from NEOM. Thank you, Rob. To my right is Umesh Desai. He is the GLA member for City and East London, also a member for London United. Thank you, Umesh, for giving us the time. To my left is Zain Mia. He's the Labour Party chair for Carringtown, also a local activist. Thank you, Zain.
Thank you.
And to my extreme left is Dr. Bari, ex-chairman East London Mosque and ex-secretary general Muslim Council of Britain. He's also the author of Parenting Consultant and A Long Jihad. Thank you, Bari Bhai, for giving us the time and agreeing to be part of the panel.
Thank you.
If I could start with Dr. Bari, in terms of the recent atrocity where we have seen in New Zealand in a city called Christchurch, where 50 defenseless innocent worshippers were gunned down by one white supremacist immigrant hating terrorist. That actually created a situation around the world where we have to think again as to how our war against all the isms, all the hate crimes need to continue. What was your initial reaction?
Well, definitely shocking and horrific. I still remember what happened with 77 young people in Norway by Timothy Anders Breivik. It's more or less similar, but Anders Breivik killed in this similar name, anti-immigration, this and that, and this man targeted the worshippers in a mosque, very much knowing that there would be innocent people, children and women there, and he deliberately went there and he made a video of himself doing things which is now illegal to observe, and killed one by one. It was a deliberate shoot to kill, desperate people who didn't have anywhere to go, and he prided himself that he has done that. He decided to do this.
It felt like slaughter by appointment, isn't it? He knew exactly what would be the situation of those defenseless worshippers.
Yeah, he even sent his video to the Prime Minister and few other people just to show that he is doing this. So it was calculated, it was inhuman, it was made to be done in a way that it gets maximum publicity, and so human beings to him don't mean anything.
Zain, as a young activist, I mean, I was actually looking at the figures in terms of the worshippers who died, the people who died actually. The youngest victim was a 3-year-old child, Ibrahim. We also lost 14-year-old Saeed, who wanted to be a footballer, 21-year-old Talha Rashid, who just got a new job and he was actually planning to get married, another 33-year-old footballer. What was your initial reaction as a young activist, as a young Muslim?
Straight away I thought this is this is one of the most evil thing that, you know, I've seen, alongside the other terrorist atrocities that has happened. I mean, the terrorist, as Dr. Bari explained, he knew where they were, what time, even at probably what position they're going to be in, because he went in around 10:40, right? And this is when they were congregating in the Jummah Salah, the Friday prayer. He knew there was not going to be anybody fighting back. He knew there wasn't going to be anyone resisting. He knew there was women, children, defenseless, a 3-year-old, and he could stream it live like that, right, without interception, and Facebook letting it run so long like that, you know. And the rhetoric behind what he mentioned some of his so-called heroes, and he mentioned Donald Trump, he mentioned a few other leaders, he mentioned his inspiration, where it was coming from, you know. And it's definitely the rhetoric we're having. Boris Johnson calling Muslim women letterboxes, I mean, and just normalizing these things, you know. And the media, in terms of the Daily Mail and all these other, you know, media, always constantly attacking some parts of the community. And they say, oh, it doesn't have, of course it has an effect. It has an effect. It has an effect because when I sit on the train sometimes, I can see some people looking at me because, you know, I've got a beard. But do they know inside that, you know, our hearts are open to everyone. We have nothing but love for our fellow human beings. But the way it's been portrayed, what these supremacists, they say about, you know, especially young group of Asian men or black ethnic minority men with beards or in certain dress codes, some of my friends have stopped wearing. I'll be honest with you, they've stopped wearing the thobe. And that's such a sad thing. But coming back to the horrific crime, you know, definitely these terrorists do not see anything, you know. They don't see any humanity.
I'll come to you. Umesh, I mean, you've been a long-standing politician. Were you actually surprised when we saw, you know, 6 people died in Quebec 2 years ago? Again, some sort of hate crime. We saw the van being driven into the Finsbury Park Mosque. We saw 11 Jews killed in Pittsburgh synagogue. We saw 9 Christians killed in Charleston, and now this recent atrocity in Al Noor and Linwood Mosque in Christchurch. This level of hate crimes, how do you see the relevance with the current political perception of various religious perspective?
Well, I think firstly we've got to recognize that terrorism recognizes no religion. This was a crime against humanity. It represents the worst of our society.
I know. I accept that. But at the same time, as Zain said, that these terrorists are also actually bringing reference to various political leaders.
Yeah. Well, that actually shows the dangerous times you're living in when you've got ideology fueling such hatred. The rhetoric, the hate-filled rhetoric and speeches of people like Boris Johnson that Zain referred to, the ideology of
Mr.
people
Trump,
like Trump,
the Australian
in
senator.
Brazil, we've had extreme right-wing politicians elected in Andalusia. What the Australian senator talked about, derogatory remarks he made about Islam. We see that pattern all across Europe. there is a dangerous rise of right-wing, extreme right-wing rhetoric fueled around immigrants, the Muslim threat, stigmatizing and stereotyping sections of our communities, scapegoating. And that is, and the media don't help the way that they report many of these events. And that is what we've got to challenge. And that is why there is urgent need now for politicians, activists, community groups, trade unions, everyone, people of all faith, no faith, to come together to form a movement against this hate-filled rhetoric and against organizations that seek to promote this rhetoric out there on the streets and in our communities, dividing communities. And hopefully later in the program we'll talk about how to fight back.
Absolutely. Rob, what was your initial reaction when you heard that this white supremacist immigrants hating this person did this?
My first reaction, like everyone's, was just the horror. I think that first day, Friday, I went to 2 local mosques during Jummah prayer and listened to others speaking and said a few words myself. And I think we all focused on the grief and the sadness and the thoughts of the victims and their communities. But my second reaction was anger, because I think it's incredibly important we understand what this event represents. If you look at the killer himself, he referenced Darren Osborne, who drove the van into Finsbury Park Mosque. He referenced, he said that Sadiq Khan should be killed. He referenced Rotherham. He wrote on one of his guns. This was a disgusting reference to the way in which Tommy Robinson and others have tried to paint the Muslim community as child abusers and so forth. And he referenced Andres Breivik. Now, he was not an ignorant, hate-filled individual. He was a hate-filled individual. But these are political acts. They are not only fueled by hate. They're fueled by people who have lock-in to political projects that they reference across the world.
And who are in a position to actually can influence people. He was influenced by these people.
Exactly.
That is why we've got to look at what's happening worldwide, not just in this country, Europe. There are extreme right-wing, ultra-nationalistic, xenophobic movements exploiting, dividing communities, using hateful rhetoric to rise to power. And I think Rob's given some very good examples of what was behind in the mentality of this person who carried out these atrocious attacks in New Zealand.
Absolutely. Coming to you, Rob, in terms of obviously, what happened to that perception of being an internationalist rather than, focusing on, because there's a kind of, it seems like that there's a blood boundaries between patriotism versus narrow nationalism.
Sorry.
In terms of blood boundaries, because
blood. Sorry. Yes.
Because people talk about patriotism versus narrow nationalism. In USA, you look at it. It's Mr. Trump is trying to kind of bring back this patriotism, this feeling.
Well, look, the underpinning narrative behind the killer in Christchurch, which he filled the pages of his manifesto with, was of what's called the replacement. The idea...
Replacement of what? Patriotism?
Exactly. No. The idea that white nations are being flooded with immigrants by a liberal elite, often a Jewish liberal elite, by the way, in order to dilute their white nationhood, and therefore control them. And this idea might sound mad, but it is shared by all those names that we've referenced here. It is shared by the movement behind Tommy Robinson, who put 15,000 on the streets last time I remember. And it is not just restricted to the far right. The Prime Minister of Australia, Scott Morrison, who expressed those words of sympathy, talks about asylum seekers invading Australia. He has a boat, a model of a fishing boat on his desk, and a slogan on it, "I stop them," because he has been at the centre of keeping asylum seekers away from the shores of Australia, dumping them on islands in Papua New Guinea, where Amnesty International are saying the conditions are so bad, people are self-harming, committing suicide, and their mental health is being affected. Now that is the Prime Minister of Australia. I mean, to his right you have the One Nation movement, Pauline Hanson, that senator who said that the victim, essentially blamed the victims of Christchurch, in the sense of saying, well, people are just reacting to immigration and their culture being flooded. You know, those people are to his right, but we're seeing centre conservative parties playing this rhetoric
Absolutely.
all over the world.
I'll come back to you. Zain, what do you want to, what do you want to add in terms of what Rob has said as a local activist from a Muslim perspective?
I think
what sort of role we should be playing?
Well, first of all, we definitely need the elected representatives within the UK, within worldwide, right, to take not the responsibility for what has happened, but to step up, right, and to defend
So we
the
need
minorities,
a more
yeah?
inclusive Muslim community.
Yes, but we
taking
also
part.
need the people who are governing our countries, yeah, to assure that they are going to look after the minorities, yeah, or people from different backgrounds, different faith, be Muslim, be Jewish, and so forth. The other thing is, we need to look at the media as well. I think the media pumps out so much garbage, right, regarding, and if it's one individual, they will take the whole
Community
race, the whole community, the whole Muslim, the whole 1.3 billion Muslims around the world. And we've said it time again and again, the Muslim community, the youth, the old, the young, we are of peace. But this is not portrayed, within the media.
This is where the question of political leadership that Rob alluded to is so important. So you look at the remarks made by the Prime Minister of Australia, and of course it's not just street movements, it's not just extreme right-wing movements, it's not just populist movements, it's also people who are in positions of power. Contrast the remarks of the Australian Prime Minister with the leadership shown by the Prime Minister of New Zealand,
Exactly.
Who not only from what I saw from media reports, the opening of the New Zealand Parliament, the Holy Quran was recited, the words that she's come out with, financial support for the victims.
Are we seeing that level of leadership in our country?
Well, Jeremy Corbyn at a vigil in Finsbury Park on Friday, I spoke with him, he was there, and his message was clear and uncompromising. We cannot bow to the forces of hate, and we must show those of us who are in power, whether at City Hall, Mr. Sadiq Khan has shown fantastic lead, Jeremy in his speech at Finsbury Park, the leaders of the trade unions, my own union, the GMB, and Unite and other people.
But your party is also struggling with anti-Semitism, isn't it? So we need to look at that.
There's a big discussion here. One is the cosmopolitan elites, or the so-called central left groups. Normally they are also the target of hatred by these groups, because these white supremacists normally they invert the reality of history. Australia, apart from Europe, Australia was not their land, America was not their land, but
we'll come back to you. We will have to go for a short break, and we'll see you soon. দর্শক আমাদের সঙ্গেই থাকুন।